The prairie had a way of swallowing sound. When the wind died, even the grass stood still, and the land lay so quiet a man could hear his own heartbeat. That was the hour the young Comanche rode. He was no more than 20, sharp in the shoulders, with black hair that whipped behind him and eyes that caught every shift of the horizon. He carried no rifle, only a bow strapped across his back, for he believed he knew the country better than any man alive. But pride can blind even the surest rider. He had been scouting the edge of the river valley, searching for strays from the horse herd his band had moved earlier that week. The sun had dropped low, staining the west in copper, when he caught the first sign that something wasn't right. A broken branch. A fresh print in the dust, not Comanche, not Kiowa boots. Settler. Boots. Heavy, square, careless with their steps. He turned his pony sharp, meaning to slip back into the cottonwoods before the last light gave him away. That was when the rifle cracked. The sound rolled across the flat like a whip. Bark burst from the tree beside him. His horse reared, snorting. Another shot spat dust near his feet. He had no cover, no time. They came from the brush, 4 of them, lean men with hard faces and coats the color of mud. Settlers, or maybe drifters who called themselves settlers when it suited. Each carried a long gun, and each had the look of someone who'd rather make $1 quick than earn it honest. "Drop it, boy," one barked, motioning to the bow. For a heartbeat, the Comanche thought of running. His pony was fast, his blood hotter still. But the distance was open, and 4 rifles spoke surer than 1 bow. His people had always taught, live if you can, fight if you must, and die only when there's no other road. He slid the bow from his shoulder and let it fall. They swarmed him then, not reckless, but practiced. One seized the reins, another jerked him down hard enough to send pain up his arm. The third tied his wrists with rawhide so stiff it cut his skin. The last man only grinned, showing yellow teeth, and said, "We'll fetch a fair price at dawn." They? Comanche kept his face still. Inside, his chest thundered. He knew what they meant. Traders moved along the wagon roads, buying and selling anything that could bring weight in silver beaver pelts, stolen rifles, whiskey by the keg. And yes, men too. If the law was far enough behind to look the other way, they dragged him into their camp, a shallow ring of stones with a meager fire burning low. His horse they tied off with theirs, speaking of how they'd sell it separate in Abilene. His bow they tossed on the ground like kindling. One man searched him for knives, jerking at his belt until he was satisfied. "You're a lucky devil." "Redskin," the leader said, poking the fire. "We could have dropped you out there and left you for coyotes. But folks eastward will pay good coin for a strong back. Better than wasting a bullet." The Comanche said nothing. He had been raised to know silence as a weapon sharper than any blade. He kept his eyes on the fire, though his mind ran like a river in flood. Dawn, they said. They would sell him at dawn. That gave him one night to find a way. Men cooked meat over the flames, passing a bottle of rot gut between them. Their laughter was coarse, their talk mean. They joked about how soft eastern townsfolk would be glad to put an Indian to scrubbing floors or breaking ground. Every word pricked the Comanche, but he did not flinch. A man who showed rage gave his captors power. A man who watched and waited could sometimes turn the knife back on them. When the bottle passed, one pressed it to his lips, mocking. "Drink, boy. Last taste before you're sold." He let the liquor touch his mouth but did not swallow. The settlers howled at that, thinking they had shamed him. But in his silence he felt a seed of strength dot as the sun bled out on the horizon. The world around them grew iron gray. The stars pricked sharp above, cold and countless. Bound at the wrists, sitting near the fire, the Comanche looked into the dark beyond the circle of light. Somewhere out there, his people camped. Somewhere, Out there, the horses grazed free. Between him and that freedom stood 4 men with rifles and the promise of silver at sunrise. He knew one thing clear. The night would decide his fate. The fire burned low, throwing sparks into the night. The 4 settlers sat cross-legged around, chewing greasy strips of meat, their rifles always within arm's reach. The Comanche sat apart, wrists bound, back against a tree. Every move he made sent the rawhide biting deeper into his skin. "Traitors roll through at first light," the leader said. He was a broad-shouldered man with a scar that ran from chin to ear. "We'll hand him over clean, take the silver, and ride out fat." The others nodded. They spoke of whiskey, cards, and women waiting east. It was clear they'd already spent the money in their heads. The Comanche kept still, watching, thinking. He had one night to change his fate. By dawn he'd be chained like a mule, carted off to work fields he'd never see before this day. He was a warrior, born free, but he was also young and he wanted to live. He cleared his throat. All 4. Heads turned sharp, like wolves catching a sound. "What's that?" One of them barked. The Comanche lifted his bound hands, voice steady. "Sell me, I'm gone. You'll see no more than silver once. Keep me," he paused, measuring each. "Word, and I'll work for you every day. I can cook, sew, clean, mend your boots, your coats. I can break horses, mend saddles, haul wood, tan hides. I'll be anything you need." For a long breath, no one spoke. Then they laughed. Hard, loud, ugly laughter that rattled through the trees. "You hear that?" one snorted. "Big bad Comanche, ready to scrub pots. Begging like a squaw." Another jeered, slapping his knee. But the man with the scar didn't laugh. He leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Say you're not lying. Say you can stitch a coat. Say you can cook better than burned bacon. Why shouldn't we believe you?" The Comanche met his stare. "Try me." The scarred man rummaged in his bedroll and pulled out a coat with a sleeve half torn away. He tossed it at the Comanche's feet. "There, fix that, firelight and all. Let's see if you're worth more than a trade." His wrists bound, the task looked impossible. Still, the Comanche shifted, working rawhide against the sharp edge of a stone until it loosened enough to free one hand. They didn't stop him curious. Now, he pulled a bone needle from the pouch they'd missed in their search. His fingers moved quick, threading a strip of sinew through torn cloth. Stitch by stitch, the sleeve took shape. Within minutes it was stronger than before, tight and neat. The men leaned closer. Even the ones who mocked before went silent. Scar grunted, tugging the sleeve. It held. Not bad. Another settler, lanky and hollow-cheeked, licked his lips. "If he can sew, maybe he can cook. I'm sick of meat burnt black." He shoved a dented pot toward him. "Here, make something of this." The Comanche nodded once. They tossed him scraps dried corn, a heel of bacon, a withered onion. He worked fast, stripping, cutting, mixing. Soon a thin stew bubbled, scent rich and smoky. The laughter faded to low murmurs. They passed bowls, slurped, then scraped them clean. "Damn," the lanky one muttered. "That's better than I've eaten in weeks." The others grunted their agreement. Even Scar kept eating until the pot was bare. The Comanche sat back, saying nothing. His work spoke for him. Around the fire, the men argued. "We'd be fools to sell him." The lanky one said, "Silver spends easier than stew." Another growled, "Yeah, but stew keeps a man alive." Scar raised a hand and the talk fell quiet. He looked at the Comanche long and hard. "You bought yourself one night. At dawn we'll see. Traverse'll be here. We'll decide then." The Comanche gave a small nod. It wasn't freedom. But it wasn't chains, not yet. The fire burned low. Coyotes yipped far off. And the bound warrior knew Before the sun rose, he had to find another way to tip the scales. The night dragged on, long and sharp as a knife. The fire was down to coals, glowing red in the ash. The settlers snored heavy, except for the one they called Lank, who sat hunched with a rifle across his knees, eyelids drooping but not shut. The Comanche didn't sleep. Couldn't. He sat cross-legged in the dirt, wrists bound again after his sewing and cooking trials. The stew smell still clung to the air, mocking him. They'd eaten like kings off his hands, yet they still planned to sell him come sunrise. His mind raced. Escape seemed near impossible. 4 rifles, 4 horses, 4 men who weren't careless enough to nod off at once. And dawn was crawling closer. So he did the only thing left. He spoke. "You sell me," he said low, steady. "You see silver once. That's all, but keep me and I'll work for you every day. I'll feed you better than jerky. I'll patch every coat, every boot. I'll sharpen blades, mend saddles, haul wood. You won't need to lift a hand." Lank gave a snort. "You think talkin' will change Scar's mind? He don't take pity, boy. He takes coin." The Comanche didn't look away. "Not pity. Trade. You think silver will keep you alive in the wild? No. Food will. Warmth will. A horse that don't throw you, boots that don't split in the rain. That's what keeps you alive." Lank shifted, uncomfortable, because deep down he knew the words rang true. He spat into the dirt. "You talk mighty bold for a man tied like a calf." "I talk because I want to live," the Comanche answered. "You sell me, I die in chains. You keep me, I live. And if I live, you live easier." The other men stirred, half awake now, catching pieces of the exchange. Scar rolled over, his scarred cheek glinting in the firelight. "What's all this noise?" he growled. Lank shrugged. "Boy's begging again. Says we'd be better off keeping him." Scar pushed himself up, rubbing his jaw. His eyes landed on the Comanche. "You already proved you can sew and cook. Don't mean you're worth more than silver in hand." The Comanche leaned forward, bound wrists pulling tight against the rawhide. His voice cut sharp, like a blade drawn slow. "Silver's gone in a week. Whiskey, cards, women gone. But I'll still be here. I'll work every day, sun or storm. I'll haul, mend, clean, fight if I must. I'll be anything you need." For a moment the only sound was the pop of coals. One of the men, younger than the rest, rubbed his chin. "Hell, Scar, he ain't wrong. I'd rather have hot stew every night than a pouch of silver gone by next month." Another spat. "Bah, we're not running no charity. He's an Indian. We sell him, we're rid of him. End of story." Scar looked from one to the other, then back at the Comanche. His eyes narrowed. "Beg all you want, boy. Begging don't make you free. It makes you desperate, and desperate men lie." The Comanche met his gaze, steady as stone. "I don't lie. I want to live. I'll prove myself every day until you believe it. All I ask is one chance." Scar studied him, face unreadable. At last he tossed a stick into the fire, sparks flaring. "You'll get your chance when I say so. Till then, shut your mouth." The decision wasn't made, not yet. But the plea was planted like a seed. The settlers muttered, arguing in low tones, some swayed, some not. Scar, though, stayed silent, chewing on the thought. The Comanche leaned back against the tree. His heart thudded, but his face stayed hard. He'd begged, yes, but not for pity. For time. And time, he knew, was the only weapon he had left out above them. The stars wheeled on. Dawn was coming fast. The first gray light of dawn was creeping in when the Comanche's words finally cracked the night. He had begged, bargained, laid out his case like a man with nothing left but the sound of his own voice. And at first, all it bought him was laughter. Scar threw back his head and let out a roar, rough and jagged as gravel in a bucket. The younger one slapped his knee till it popped. Even the mean-eyed drifter, the one who hadn't cracked a smile all night, bared yellow teeth. "Well, I'll be damned," Scar wheezed between gulps of air. "Listen to him. Big proud Comanche, the scourge of the plains reduced to begging for dishwater work. You hear him promise to mend boots?" The young one snorted. "Next he'll be offering to sing us lullabies." The mean-eyed man spat into the dirt. Might as well ask him to sweep the trail with his hair. Their laughter echoed across the valley, cutting sharper than any knife. The Comanche sat still, jaw tight, eyes on the fire. He'd heard laughter before, raucous at feasts, cruel on the battlefield. But this kind was different. It wasn't just amusement, it was triumph. They laughed because they thought they'd broken him. Inside, heat boiled. Rage clawed to get out, to spit curses in his mother tongue, to lunge teeth first at the nearest throat. But he swallowed it down. Rage was a trap. Rage gave them what they wanted. Silence was his shield, and silence he kept. Scar wiped his eyes and leaned closer, grin wide. "Tell me, boy, can you darn socks too? Maybe press a shirt, trim my beard?" The young one cackled. "He'll be polishing our boots with his tongue before long." More laughter, loud. Mean dot then, like a whip crack, Scar's voice snapped them quiet. "Enough," the fire popped. The morning breeze carried smoke thin into the pale sky. Scar stared at the Comanche, his grin gone, eyes sharp again. "Funny as it is," he said slowly, "there's something in what he said. Silver spends quick, work lasts longer." That shut the others up fast. The lanky one, the one who'd eaten the stew like it was heaven itself, leaned forward. "Ain't no joke, Scar. Man can sew. Man can cook. That's worth more'n a coin purse in the wild." But the mean-eyed one snarled. "You gone soft?" "He's still an Indian. That's all the East wants, an Indian slave. We hand him over, we ride free and clear. We keep him, and we're dragging trouble behind us." Scar rubbed the scar along, his jaw silent. The firelight made his face look carved from stone. The Comanche spoke then, voice calm, steady, like a drumbeat under their noise. "You laugh now. But you'll remember my words when your belly's empty, when your coat splits in the cold, when your boots crack and leave you barefoot in snow. Silver won't save you, but I can." The laughter didn't rise again. The younger one shifted. "Uneasy. Scar, what if he runs?" Scar's eyes stayed locked on the Comanche. "Then he dies. Simple." The Comanche held his stare, unblinking. He did not flinch. He wanted them to see it. He wasn't a beaten dog, no matter how hard they mocked. He was a man bargaining with the only coin left to him, his hands, his skill, his will to live. Scar stood, stretched, and tossed a log onto the fire. Sparks hissed. "We'll see what the traders offer. If the price is fat, maybe we trade. If not, maybe we keep ourselves a cook and a cobbler." The others muttered, some for, some against. But the laughter didn't come back. Not this time. The Comanche sat straight-backed, the rope biting into his wrists, the cold morning creeping through his shirt. They'd tried to bury him under their jeers, but a seed had been planted in Scar's mind. Laughter was smoke. Doubt was fire, and fire had a way of spreading. The morning wind carried dust across the camp, cold and thin. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky was turning pale. Traders no doubt already bumping wagons along the trail. Scar squatted by the fire, chewing a strip of meat, eyes never leaving. The Comanche talks cheap, he said at last. "You claim you can work. Prove it, now." The younger one grinned, eager. He snatched up a ragged coat from his bedroll, one sleeve hanging in tatters. "Here, Redskin, fix this mess. Let's see if you're half what you say." He tossed it at the Comanche's feet. The bound man didn't flinch. He looked at the coat, then at the rawhide digging into his wrists. "I'll need my hands," he said. Scar thought a moment, then jerked his chin. Lank pulled a knife and cut the ropes loose. "Don't be stupid," Scar warned. "One wrong move, you're dead where you sit." The Comanche didn't waste a breath. He dug into a pouch they'd missed in their rough search a sliver of bone needle, a twist of sinew thread. His fingers moved fast, steady, weaving the torn cloth back together. Stitch by stitch, the gap closed, tighter and neater than any store-bought work. The men leaned in. "Hell," Lank muttered. "That's finer than my old lady ever stitched." Scar yanked the coat back when it was done, tugged at the seam. It held, he grunted. "Not bad." The Comanche said nothing. His hands spoke louder than words. The younger one wasn't satisfied. "Sewing's women's work. Let's see him cook again. Something real. Not just soup." Scar considered then. Nodded. "All right. Pot's yours, boy." They threw him scraps cornmeal, a strip of bacon rind, some dried beans. Barely enough for dogs, let alone men. The Comanche set to work. He crushed the cornmeal, stirred it with water till it thickened, fried it on a flat stone greased with the bacon fat. Beans he simmered, seasoning them with wild herbs he'd picked from the edge of camp the night before. Smoke curled up, carrying a smell that tugged at empty bellies. By the time the sun was edging over the horizon, he slid the food toward them. Scar took the first bite. His jaw worked slow, then stopped. He swallowed, glanced at the others. Eat. They didn't need telling twice. The men tore in, scraping the stone clean. Even the mean-eyed drifter, who had mocked hardest, licked his fingers when the last crumb was gone. The Comanche sat back, arms crossed. He didn't smile, but inside he knew he'd won a sliver more ground. The young one wiped his mouth. "I'll be damned. Fella can stitch, fella can cook. What else can he do?" "Anything you need," the Comanche answered flat. Scar chewed that over, eyes narrowed. He wasn't laughing now. He saw value, sure, but he also saw danger. A man too useful to kill, too proud to break easy. Bootsteps crunched on the trail nearby. Voices. A wagon creaked. Oxen lowing. The traders were coming. Scar stood, dusted off his hands, and looked at his men. "Well, boys, we've got ourselves a choice. Silver now, or sweat later. Which'll it be?" The men looked at one another, their faces lined with hunger, greed, doubt. The Comanche said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He'd passed the test. Now came the judgment. The wagon wheels creaked closer, iron rims clattering against stone. Oxen bellowed and voices called out in the gray light. The traders would be upon them soon. Scar didn't move. He stood with arms folded, watching the Comanche like a rancher weighing a bull. His men shifted uneasily. Lank spoke first. "Scar, I ain't yoking. I've not eaten that good since Missouri. Man's worth keepin'." The younger one spat, but softer this time. "Silver don't fill your belly. He does." Mean Eyes scowled. "You all gone soft? We ain't keepin' no Indian. Silver's clean, simple, no strings. You keep him, he'll slit our throats the first night he gets loose." Scar didn't answer. He crouched near the repaired coat, fingering the stitches. Then he picked up the pot, still warm from the beans. He studied it a long while, then set it down. The Comanche sat bound again, rope cutting into his wrists, but his eyes never wavered. He wasn't begging anymore. He let the silence work for him. Scar finally broke it. "I've known plenty of liars. This one ain't lying," Lank grinned. "That's what I'm saying. He works harder'n half the white boys I've rode with." "Work don't matter if he runs," Mean Eyes snapped. Scar shook his head slow. "He don't look like a runner. Looks like a man who knows he's cornered and knows his best chance is keeping us fed and clothed." The young one rubbed his chin. I dunno, Scar. Feels like gambling. Scar snorted. Every trail's a gamble. You want silver, fine. But I seen silver burn through a man's hands faster than whiskey. This, he jerked his head at the Comanche, this lasts. For the first time since capture, the Comanche felt the air shift. The men weren't laughing now. They weren't. Mocking. They were weighing him like cattle at auction, yes, but also like a tool they weren't sure they could afford to throw away. The Comanche leaned forward, voice steady. I said I'll be anything you need. I meant it. You've tested me. You've seen what I can do. You keep me, you won't regret it. Lank nodded hard. The younger one hesitated, then nodded too. Only Mean Eyes held firm, his scowl carved deep. Scar raised a hand and the talk died. Enough. Traders are nearly here. We'll hear their price. If it's good, maybe we deal. If not, maybe we don't. But either way, this one's bought himself. Look, he ain't just another Indian to trade. That landed heavy. Respect wasn't spoken outright, not among men like this. But it showed in the way they glanced at him now, not just as cargo, not just as a prize, but as something more. Comanche sat tall, though the rope still bound him. He had bought time. He had planted doubt. And in Scar's eyes he saw it, the first flicker of respect. Small as a spark, but sparks could grow into flame. The creak of wagons grew louder. The smell of dust and mule sweat filled the air. The moment of decision was closing fast. The Comanche steadied his breath. Dawn was here. Now came the true test. The wagons weren't due until sunrise, but no one slept easy that night. The fire burned low, hissing now and then as fat popped from the last strip of bacon. The four settlers sat in their blankets, rifles closed, eyes glinting in the half-dark. The Comanche sat apart, rope biting his wrists, back against a tree. The air between them was heavy, thicker than smoke. Scar broke the silence first. We've got a choice to make, boys. Silver in hand or keeping him. Lank didn't hesitate. Keep him. Man's worth 10 bags of silver if he works the way he's shown. Mean Eyes spat into the dirt. Silver don't stab you in the back while you're sleeping. I say sell him. Walk away clean. The younger one shifted, nervous. I ain't sure. I can't stop thinking on that, Stu. My belly says keep him. My head says trade him. Scar just stared at the fire, saying nothing. His scar caught the glow, making his face look carved from iron. The Comanche watched them quietly. Every word mattered now. They weren't united, and men divided could be swayed. He kept his mouth shut, letting them argue. You're fools, Mean Eyes snarled. You think he'll keep feeding us, mending our coats, happy as a tame dog? He'll wait till we're fat and soft, then cut our throats. Lank shot back. You don't see it, do you? He ain't begging no more. He's dealing. That ain't the same thing. You sell him. We're no better than the traders, just another pack of thieves. Mean Eye's hand twitched toward his rifle. Better a thief than a corpse. Scar finally lifted his head. Enough. His voice cracked like a whip, silencing them. You're both right. He's dangerous, but so's every man alive. Question. Which danger pays better? The camp fell quiet again. The only sound was the night wind sliding through the grass. The Comanche spoke then, low but steady. You fear I'll run. I won't. You fear I'll kill you. I won't unless you push me to it. You keep me, I'll give you more than silver ever could. Food, warmth, work. I'll be anything you need. Mean Eyes barked a laugh. Hear that? Still begging. Scar shook his head. No, he's macking his case. Man fights with words when he can't fight with steel. Don't mean he's weak. That shut Mean Eyes up for a moment. The night dragged. They argued in circles, silver versus sweat, safety versus usefulness. The Comanche sat silent again, only his eyes moving, watching each man's face as if carving their weaknesses into memory. Finally, Scar stretched out on his blanket, rifle laid across his chest. "We'll settle it at dawn," he muttered. "Tradurs'll show. We'll hear their price. Till then, shut your mouths and sleep." The others lay down, though none slept sound. Lank tossed, muttering. The younger one rolled on his side, staring at the Comanche through the smoke. Mean Eyes lay rigid, fingers drumming his rifle stock. The Comanche closed his eyes, but not to rest. He listened to their breathing, the shifting of their weight, the creak of leather as they moved. He memorized it all, knowing the night would decide his fate. Above, the stars turned slow. The horizon glowed faintly. Morning was coming, and with it, judgment. The first streaks of daylight stretched across the plains, painting the grass a pale gold. The settlers stirred, stiff and hollow-eyed from a night with little sleep. The Comanche was already awake, rope cutting his wrists, back straight against the tree. He hadn't closed his eyes once. Then came the sound. Wagon wheels groaning. Oxen snorting. Voices calling, sharp in the morning chill. The traders. Scar rose to his feet, dusting off his coat. His men followed, rifles slung. The Comanche watched them exchange looks, nervous, greedy, uncertain. The wagon rolled into view, canvas-patched, side stained with road dust. Two men walked beside it, long coats flapping, faces drawn lean. Traders, no doubt. The kind who dealt in anything, furs, rifles, whiskey, or flesh if no one asked too many questions. One called out, "Morning, boys. Got something for us?" Scar stepped forward, his scar catching the light. "Might be," he said. He jerked a thumb at the Comanche tied against the tree. "Picked him up last night. Strong, young, knows how to work." The trader's eyes sharpened. They walked over, sizing him up like buyers at a horse fair. One squatted low, gripping the Comanche's jaw, turning his face side to side. "Good teeth. Should fetch a fair price?" The Comanche didn't flinch. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "What are you, a skin?" The second trader said, "50 silver," Scar answered flat. The first trader barked a laugh. "50? For one Comanche? You're dreamin', 30. 45, Scar shot back. 35, and that's generous. The settlers shifted. The younger one licked his lips. Lank looked restless, eyes darting from Scar to the Comanche. Mean Eyes just grinned, already smelling the coin. Scar rubbed his jaw. 40, or you walk. The traders exchanged a glance. One gave a sharp nod. 40, then. The deal was nearly struck. That was the moment the Comanche spoke. His voice was steady, hard, cutting through the air like a knife. "You sell me, you get silver once. You keep me, you get food every day, warmth every night. Boots mended, coat sewn, horses broke. I'll be anything you need. You sell me, you'll regret it." The trader sneered. "Quiet, boy. You don't get a say," but Scar hesitated. He looked down at the repaired coat he wore, then at the empty pot from last night's stew. His scar twitched as he ground his teeth. Lank stepped forward. "Scar, don't do it. 40 silver's gone in a month. He's worth more than that in a year." The young one nodded, uneasy. "Man ain't wrong. Belly says keep him." Mean Eyes snarled. "You're both fools. Silver's right here, in our hands. We walk away clean, no strings." Scar raised a hand, silencing them all. He stared at the Comanche, eyes narrow. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Scar turned back to the traders. "Deal's off." The trader stiffened. "What?" "You heard me. Man's worth more to me here than he is to you eastbound." The traders' faces darkened. "You'll regret this." Men like him bring nothing but trouble. Scar's voice was like stone. Then I'll keep the trouble close where I can see it. The traders spat, cursed, and whipped the oxen forward. The wagon rattled down the trail, dust rising behind them until they vanished into the horizon. Silence fell heavy over the camp. The Comanche sat tall, rope still binding him, but inside he felt the shift. The chains of trade had been broken, if only barely. Scar had chosen sweat over silver dot. It wasn't freedom. Not yet. But it wasn't slavery either. The dawn had brought a decision, and with it, a thin, sharp thread of hope. The dust of the trader's wagon still hung in the air when Scar turned back toward the fire. The others just stared, some stunned, some angry, some unsure what to feel. Mean eyes broke first. You gone mad, Scar? 40 silver, right there. In our hands, and you throw it away? Scar's voice was calm, iron flat. Silver spends fast. A man who works don't. Mean Eyes jabbed a finger toward the Comanche. He ain't a man, he's an Indian. He'll bolt the first chance he gets. Scar's eyes flashed. Then we'll kill him if he does. The camp went quiet. Even Lank, who'd been backing the Comanche all along, looked uneasy at how coldly Scar said it. The Comanche held his tongue. He didn't thank him, didn't smile. In his people's way, a man didn't beg gratitude where none was owed. Scar hadn't spared him for kindness. He'd spared him because he saw use in him. That was all. But use was better than a chain, better than being hauled east to a life of misery. Scar crouched, cutting the rope at the Comanche's wrists. You're no longer for sale. But hear me. Boy, you crossed me once, you're dead. You understand? The Comanche rubbed his raw wrists, nodded once. I understand. Scar straightened. Good, then get to work. Fire needs wood. The others watched, still bristling. The younger one looked away, troubled. Lank nodded faintly, like a man satisfied he'd won the argument. Mean Eyes only glared, chewing the inside of his cheek like he meant to spit nails. The Comanche rose. His legs ached, stiff from sitting bound all night, but he moved without complaint. He stepped into the brush, gathered fallen branches, hauled them back. His muscles burned, but he kept his face stone still. Scar watched him the whole time. Not like a jailer, more like a rancher testing a horse, waiting to see if it bucked. When the woodpile grew high, Scar nodded. That'll do. The Comanche sat back down, silent. He felt the eyes on him, sharp as blades. He wasn't free, not even close. He was still trapped in the circle of their fire, still one wrong move from death. But something had shifted. He wasn't just a prize to be sold anymore. He was part of their camp. Not kin, not equal, but not cargo either. For a Comanche warrior bound and captured, that was no small twist of mercy. The men argued again when Scar stepped away to sharpen his knife. Lank kept saying the decision was smart, that the Comanche would keep them fed, clothed, alive longer than Silver would. The younger one agreed, but weakly, like he still doubted. Mean Eyes cursed, saying Scar had made a fool's bargain that would end with blood in the dirt. Through it all, the Comanche stayed silent. He knew better than to add his voice now. Words had brought him this far, but words could also push too far. Sometimes a man lived longer by letting others argue themselves. Tired as the sun climbed higher, he sat watching the horizon. The land stretched endless, a sea of grass rolling toward the edge of the world. Somewhere out there, his people rode free. Somewhere horses thundered across the plain, and no rope cut into their skin. He clenched his jaw, steadying the fire. Inside him, he wasn't free, but he wasn't sold. And that meant one thing. He still had a chance. The sun stood high by the time the camp settled. The traders were gone, the deal broken. The settlers busied themselves with saddles, rifles, and gear. Though their eyes still flicked often toward the Comanche, Scar gave orders like nothing had changed. Lank, check the horses. Young'un, fetch water. Mean Eyes, see to the packs. Then, his gaze cut to the Comanche. You, mend that saddle strap. It wasn't a request. The Comanche took the leather, worked it with the same steady hands that had stitched the coat and cooked the stew. His fingers moved sure, his mind calm. He could feel the weight of every glance on him, testing, waiting to see if he'd falter, if he'd lash out, if he'd make a break for it. He did none of those. He worked. When he finished, Scar inspected the strap, tugging hard. It held. Scar gave a short grunt. Good. That one word wasn't praise, but it wasn't mockery either. It was acknowledgement. The younger one shifted, awkwardly, muttering, "Never thought I'd see the day a Comanche sat stitching for us." Lank answered, tone flat, "Better than starving." Mean Eyes said nothing. His glare was enough. The Comanche kept his silence. He knew what he was now, not free, not slave. Something in between, useful, necessary, tolerated. But as he worked through the morning, a strange rhythm settled over the camp. When the fire burned low, he fed it. When the pot hung empty, he filled it. When the leather cracked, he mended it. The settlers didn't thank him, but they didn't sneer either. The laughter was gone. In its place was something harder, quieter. Respect born not of kindness, but of need. At midday, Scar sat with his rifle across his knees, watching. "You said you'd be anything we need," he said. The Comanche met his eyes. "I meant it." Scar nodded once. "Then maybe you'll live long enough to prove it." The younger one chuckled nervously. Lank smirked. Mean Eyes spat, but no one argued. The Comanche sat straighter. The rope no longer bound his wrists, but the weight of captivity still pressed on him. Yet inside, he felt something shift. He had not been sold. He had not been broken. He had bargained, and the bargain had bought him more than survival. It had bought him time. And time, he knew, could change everything. The settlers moved on with their work, but the camp felt different now. He wasn't kin, not yet. But he wasn't just an enemy prisoner either. He was a man who had carved out a place, fragile and narrow, with nothing but his skill, his will, and his refusal to die easy. The day wore on. Horses stamped in the dust. The fire crackled low. The prairie stretched endless around them, swallowing. Sound, swallowing pride. And in the uneasy space between enemy and ally, the Comanche sat alive, unbroken, waiting for what came next.